The morning sun painted Lakewood Community Park in warm gold, casting long shadows across the picnic tables that lined Pavilion 6. It was the kind of day that promised joy, clear skies, a gentle breeze, and the smell of freshly cut grass drifting in the air. For Caleb Rivers, it wasn't just a birthday party. It was a mission. And like every mission he'd ever taken on, he approached it with precise care, quiet focus, and a heart full of purpose. He'd been at the park since sunrise, arranging tables, tying balloons, and triple-checking every detail. The red and blue Spider Hero decoration stretched across the pavilion like a miniature festival, each banner tied with surgical precision. It wasn't that Caleb was controlling, Danielle would tease him otherwise, it was that he understood how precious memories were. And today belonged entirely to his son, Jaden. Danielle walked across the pavilion carrying a tray of cupcakes, her curls bouncing with every step. "Caleb," she called out with a half-smile, "you're measuring the balloons again. Normal dads don't measure balloon height." He glanced over his shoulder. "Normal dads don't have a kid who talks about this party every day for 4 weeks straight." "Touché." She set the tray down and kissed his cheek. "He's lucky to have you." Lucky. The word stung just enough to remind him of the truth. Jaden didn't know who his father really was. To the community, Caleb was a construction worker who volunteered with neighborhood kids and fixed broken porch steps for free. To his neighbors, he was the friendly guy who always showed up on time for church events and knew everyone's birthday. But behind the smile and easy charm lived a truth only a handful of people knew. For the past 9 months, Caleb Rivers had been living under a different name, in a different life, gathering evidence on the most dangerous corruption ring the Northwood Police Department had ever birthed. He had infiltrated a community not to spy on them, but today wasn't about any of that. Today was about Jaden Rivers turning 8. "Daddy," a small voice suddenly shouted from across the playground. Jaden sprinted toward him full speed, cape flapping behind him, superhero mask crooked on his forehead. His sneakers skidded to a stop just before colliding with his father's legs. "Dad! You gotta come see the treasure hunt clues. Auntie Mel said you hid them, but I found 3 already, 3. And there's one behind the big tree, but I didn't grab it 'cause I wanted to wait for you." Caleb knelt and scooped him into a hug. Jaden smelled like sunscreen and pure excitement. "Slow down, champ. You've got the whole day to collect them all." "No," Jaden said dramatically, "because treasure waits for no one." Caleb laughed, ruffling his hair. "Is that so?" "Aha. Mom said the treasure hunt is the best part. But this," he spun in a circle, arms wide. "This is the best birthday ever." And for a moment, just a moment, Caleb let himself believe it. Guests began to arrive. Miss Gloria with her peach cobbler. The Peterson twins arguing over who carried the heavier bag. Mr. Harris pretending not to limp. Mothers setting down casserole dishes. Fathers carrying folding chairs. Laughter filled the space, warm, familiar, safe. Caleb felt a sense of pride swelling inside him. This wasn't just a party. It was a celebration of community, of togetherness, of life without fear. But as he lifted the last banner and tied the final knot, his phone buzzed in his pocket. One glance at the screen froze the breath in his lungs. "Incoming dispatch, Unit 7 en route. Anonymous complaint filed. Your cover may be compromised. Abort if necessary." The message was sharp enough to slice through the perfect morning. Caleb stared out toward the park entrance. The breeze stilled. His instincts screamed. Something was coming. Something dangerous. And the perfect day was about to break. It started with the faintest tremor, so subtle that most parents chatting near the picnic tables didn't notice. But Caleb did. Years of training had sharpened his senses to the smallest shifts, the sudden silence of birds, the strange stillness of air, the vibration beneath the ground. Then came the sound that shattered the afternoon. Sirens. Not the casual hum of a patrol car passing by. Not the warning wail of an ambulance heading to a call. These were aggressive, sharpened, purposeful, sirens meant to intimidate. 3 police cruisers flew down the park's gravel road, engines roaring as if they were storming a crime scene. Families stiffened. Children stopped mid-game. Even the breeze seemed terrified into silence. Caleb's heart sank. They weren't just responding. They were coming. The first cruiser skidded to a stop so hard the tires screamed, leaving a scrape mark across the pavement. The door flung open, and out stepped Captain Marla Hensley, her short blonde hair slicing the sunlight like a blade. Her posture radiated entitlement, as though the entire park, and everyone in it, was beneath her. Behind her climbed out officers Briggs and Keener, both with reputations that sent cold shivers through communities. Caleb knew their files by heart. Excessive force complaints. Intimidation. Harassment. Street sweeps that never made it to the news. And now they were here. At a child's birthday party. Danielle instinctively pulled Jaden close, her body tense. The children stopped playing and inched behind their parents, eyes wide. Even the Peterson twins, usually fearless, clung to each other. Hensley surveyed the decorations with open disdain, lips curling as if the sight of joy offended her. "Well, well," she announced loudly. "Another unauthorized gathering." Caleb stepped forward but kept his expression calm. "Captain, this space was reserved through the city's online portal. We have the confirmation." Hensley raised a hand sharply, silencing him. "I wasn't talking to you," she snapped. Her tone sliced through the air. Instead, she turned to her officers. "Briggs, Keener, start clearing this mess." "What?" Danielle gasped. "This is a child's." But Briggs was already moving. In one violent sweep of his arm, he knocked over the main food table. Trays clattered. Cakes crashed. Juice containers burst open, splashing across the pavement. Kids screamed. Parents yelled. The sound of joy died instantly. Keener strode toward the gift table, his heavy hand slamming against the stacked presents. Boxes tumbled like fallen soldiers, wrapping paper tearing, ribbons snapping. "Please stop," a mother cried. But they didn't. They acted like the families weren't even human. Hensley smirked, hands resting casually on her belt. "Consider this a reminder, public spaces aren't for gatherings like this." Caleb felt heat rising in his chest, a silent burn that begged for release. But he forced himself to breathe, to think, to stay undercover. Danielle looked at him, fear flickering across her face. "Caleb, do something." He swallowed hard. If he acted as an agent, he exposed his cover. If he stayed silent, Jaden watched his birthday crumble. His phone buzzed again in his pocket. Another message from command. "Hold position. Do not reveal identity unless life-threatening." Life-threatening. He glanced around the pavilion. The trembling children. The crying toddlers. The terrified parents. Then he saw Jaden, the boy who believed birthdays were magical, who believed his father could fix anything, standing frozen, watching strangers destroy everything he'd been excited about for weeks. "Dad, why are they doing this?" he whispered. Caleb's breath broke. Hensley marched straight toward him now, boots heavy on the concrete, stopping only a foot away. "You," she said coldly, "are the one running this event. Let's see what gives you the right." Her voice wasn't a question. It was a threat. And for the first time that day, Caleb realized. This wasn't a random complaint. This was targeted. A warning. A message meant to break him. And it had only just begun. Captain Hensley stopped directly in front of Caleb, her shadow falling over him like a storm cloud swallowing the sun. The air around them felt heavy, as if the park itself was holding its breath. Children huddled behind their parents. Adults whispered angrily but dared not step forward. No one knew what would happen next, but everyone could feel that something was terribly wrong. Hensley clicked her tongue, examining Caleb with slow hostility. "You're the one who organized this fiasco, aren't you?" "We reserved this pavilion legally," Caleb answered evenly. "If you give me a moment, I can show you." Her hand snapped up, palm inches from his face. "I said I don't need your explanations." Briggs and Keener spread out behind her, flanking Caleb like predators preparing to corner a wounded animal. Their hands hovered close to their holsters, not gripping them, but close enough to intimidate every parent watching. Caleb kept his posture calm. His training ran deep: read the room, read the angles, read the intentions. And everything he saw told him the same thing. They weren't here to enforce anything. They were here to provoke. Hensley stepped even closer, her breath hot with resentment. "People like you think you can take over whatever space you want. Think rules don't apply to you." Her eyes flicked over the families. "I've seen plenty of this, these little, community gatherings. Always trouble." Danielle moved closer, desperate. "Ma'am, please, our son is turning 8. He invited his classmates. They're terrified. This is a misunderstanding." Hensley didn't even glance at her. "Quiet." The single word was a slap. Then, without warning, Hensley shoved Caleb. Hard. He stumbled backward but caught himself. Jaden screamed, trying to run toward him, but Danielle grabbed him tightly, holding him back with trembling arms. "Don't touch my dad!" Jaden cried. Briggs immediately stepped forward, blocking Jaden with a large, imposing stance. "Control your kid," he growled. That did it. Caleb's instincts surged. Every muscle in his body demanded action. But his mind, trained, disciplined, forced him to stay rooted. One wrong move could get someone hurt. One misstep could blow his cover before he had the chance to end the corruption for good. Hensley circled him slowly, like a shark tasting blood. "You're awfully calm for a man surrounded by officers. Makes me think you're hiding something." She jabbed a finger into his chest. "Turn around. Hands behind your head." The families gasped. Danielle shook her head violently. "No. He didn't do anything." Hensley smirked. "That's for us to decide." Keena grabbed Caleb's shoulder and spun him around. Briggs kicked his feet wider apart. Caleb looked over his shoulder just in time to see Jaden covering his ears, sobbing. His heart cracked. But he didn't resist. He let his knees hit the concrete, slowly, controlled, though pain shot up his legs. Parents shouted in outrage. Children shrieked. Phones came out, shaking, recording everything. Seeing him kneel broke something inside the crowd. These were people who respected him, who trusted him, who had no idea they were watching a federal agent submit not because he was powerless, but because he loved them enough to stay in control. Keener began a rough, invasive pat-down, searching Caleb's pockets. Then suddenly, he froze. "What's this?" Keener muttered, pulling out a small leather case. Hensley snatched it from his hands. She flipped it open. The gold federal badge glinted in the sunlight. For a heartbeat, the entire world went silent. Then she laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me. A fake federal badge? That's cute." She tossed it to the ground like trash. Briggs stomped on it. Danielle screamed, "Stop. That's enough." Hensley leaned down, voice low and venomous. "Impersonating a federal officer, now that's a serious charge." Caleb looked up at her, eyes steady, heart pounding. He wanted to say it. "It's real. You have no idea who I am. You just made the biggest mistake of your career." But he stayed silent. Because if she thought this was over, she had no idea what storm she had just called down on herself. The moment Briggs crushed the badge under his boot, something shifted in the air, an invisible crack that everyone felt but no one could name. The families watching stood frozen, unsure whether to intervene or to shield their children. The sound of paper plates rustling in the breeze suddenly felt too loud, too wrong, too cruel for a child's birthday. Caleb remained on his knees, jaw tight, eyes locked on the shredded edges of his badge. He didn't dare move. Not because he was afraid, but because he knew these officers wanted him to. They wanted the smallest resistance, the slightest twitch, the faintest sign of defiance so they could escalate. Hensley paced behind him, boots grinding into the dirt. "You really thought you could stroll into this park, wave a toy badge, and do whatever you want," she mocked. "Pathetic." Danielle rushed forward, only to be stopped by Keener's outstretched arm. "Ma'am, step back." Her voice cracked. "He hasn't done anything. You can't." "I said step back," Keener repeated, louder this time. He moved closer, his hand hovering near his taser. Danielle froze, tears spilling down her cheeks. She held Jaden tightly, shielding him with her trembling body. But Briggs wasn't finished. He walked toward the crying children gathered near the playground, his eyes cold and unblinking. "You kids need to move along," he barked. "This area is closed." A few children whimpered, backing behind their parents. Briggs spotted Jaden. The boy was shaking uncontrollably, cheeks wet, lip trembling. He hid behind Danielle's legs, clutching her shirt. Briggs approached him deliberately, leaning down until his face was inches from the terrified 8-year-old. "Hey," he sneered, "your dad's causing trouble. Maybe you should learn to listen better than him." Jaden's small voice wavered. I didn't do anything." Caleb's heart detonated. "Briggs!" Danielle snapped, stepping in front of her son. "Don't you dare speak to him like." Briggs yanked her arm away. Jaden screamed. And Caleb's vision went red. He rose to his feet so quickly that even Hensley stepped back, startled. The tension in the air snapped like a gunshot. Within seconds, all three officers drew closer, forming a wall of hostility. "Sit back. Down," Hensley hissed. But Caleb didn't move. "Take your hands off my wife," he said softly, the kind of soft that was infinitely more dangerous than shouting. Briggs snorted. Or what? You'll call your imaginary superiors. And then he made the worst mistake of his life. He reached for Jaden. Not fast, not obviously, but enough. Caleb stepped forward with lethal precision, positioning himself between the officer and his child. Hensley's eyes narrowed. Trying to obstruct officers now? That adds another charge. Caleb didn't flinch. You lay one more finger on my family, he said quietly, and I promise you'll regret it. Hensley laughed, mistaking calm for weakness. Oh, you're going to promise me something? How adorable. Briggs, cuff him. Let's show the community what happens when someone plays hero. Briggs moved in, handcuffs ready. And that was it. The line had been crossed. Caleb slowly reached into his pocket. Briggs tensed, hand darting toward his holster. But Caleb wasn't grabbing a weapon. He pulled out his phone. No trembling. No hesitation. No fear. Just a calm, steady movement. He tapped a single number, one that bypassed every district, every barrier, every chain of command. A number meant to be used only when an operation collapsed. When lives were at stake. When the truth had to come out. He raised the phone to his ear. Hensley rolled her eyes. Oh, look at this. Going to call your little friends? You think someone's coming to save you? Caleb stared directly into her eyes as the line clicked. This is Special Agent Caleb Rivers, he said. Badge number 5671. My cover is blown. Officers are threatening civilians, including minors. I need immediate federal intervention. Silence fell so heavy over the park it felt like gravity had doubled. Hensley's smirk faltered. What did you just say? Caleb didn't blink. You heard me. And somewhere in the distance, sirens began to grow louder. Not police sirens. Something far more powerful. The moment Caleb finished speaking those words, Special Agent Caleb Rivers, immediate federal intervention, it felt as if the ground itself held its breath. Every parent, every child, every trembling voice in the pavilion froze. Even the breeze seemed to stop mid-air, waiting for something no one could see but everyone could feel approaching. Hensley blinked twice. Then she laughed, a harsh, humorless sound that cracked through the tension like a whip. Are you serious? She scoffed. You're delusional. You're no agent. You're nothing but a fraud playing dress-up at a birthday party. Briggs joined in with a low, mocking chuckle. Keener smirked, arms crossed, posture filled with smug certainty. But Caleb didn't look away. He didn't lower the phone. He didn't tremble. He had spent 9 months pretending to be a man smaller than he was. He had swallowed disrespect, endured slurs, taken humiliation to protect the entire community. But the moment Briggs reached for Jaden, the mission ceased to be undercover. It became personal. On the phone, an operator spoke again. Agent Rivers, confirm your location. Lakewood Community Park. Pavilion 6. Hostile local officers on scene. Repeat, civilians and minors are in danger. Hensley stepped closer, trying to snatch the phone out of his hand. Caleb sidestepped effortlessly, a movement so fluid, so controlled, that for the first time Briggs' confidence flickered. Put that phone down. Hensley barked. But Caleb wasn't listening to her anymore. Evacuation protocols? The operator asked. Negative, Caleb replied calmly. Just send the team. Hensley shoved him. Who do you think you're talking to? Caleb met her eyes with a cold, quiet truth. A higher authority than you will ever understand. And then it happened. A distant rumble. Not a siren. Not a car. Not thunder. A thick, heavy, rhythmic thudding that sent chills up spines, growing louder with every passing second. "What is that?" a mother whispered. Kids clung to their parents. Even the wind changed direction, pushing leaves across the grass toward the noise. Then someone yelled. "Look!" From beyond the tree line, black SUVs tore across the grass, engines roaring like beasts. They moved fast, coordinated, aggressive. The front vehicle bore bold white letters. Federal Response Unit. Parents gasped. Children stared with wide, awe-filled eyes. And then, a helicopter sliced through the sky overhead, kicking up dust, scattering tablecloths, sending balloons swirling into the air. Its spotlight snapped onto the pavilion. The officers flinched, hands drifting toward their belts. Hensley's face drained of color. What is this?" she stammered. Briggs reached for his weapon, a fatal mistake. "Don't!" Caleb barked. "Do not draw on them." But it was too late. The SUV doors flew open and federal agents poured out, black uniforms, tactical gear, headsets tight, weapons lowered but ready, moving in synchronized formation. Agent Renee Porter, sharp-eyed and fierce, stormed toward the pavilion with a badge held high. Her voice thundered across the park. "Federal agents, drop your weapons and step back." Parents hurried their children behind the tables. Families formed protective circles. Phones came out again, but this time, people recorded with hope instead of fear. Hensley raised her hands slowly. This is a misunderstanding." "Captain Marla Hensley," Agent Porter cut in, "you are under federal arrest for civil rights violations, obstruction of justice, harassment, falsifying complaints, and interfering in an active federal investigation." Briggs's jaw hung open. Keener's knees visibly shook. Hensley struggled to form words. You can't." "I didn't." Caleb finally stepped forward. He retrieved his badge from the dirt, dusted it off, and held it up, gleaming in the sunlight. "You destroyed it," he said quietly, "but you didn't erase who I am." Jaden peeked from behind Danielle, eyes wide as the truth unfolded before him. Agent Porter nodded at Caleb with respect. "Good call, Rivers. We've been waiting." Federal agents swarmed the corrupt officers, securing weapons, placing them in restraints. Hensley's screams dissolved into the grass. Briggs cursed. Keener tried to hide behind a weak excuse. But it didn't matter anymore. Justice had arrived. Not with paperwork, not with apologies. But with helicopters, armored vehicles, and the weight of federal law. And the birthday party they tried to destroy. It was about to become the takedown that changed everything. By the time the corrupt officers were loaded into the armored SUVs, the atmosphere in Lakewood Community Park had transformed from terror to trembling disbelief. Parents held their children close. Teens replayed their footage over and over, unable to believe they had just witnessed a federal takedown at a birthday party. Even the elderly stood rooted in place, gripping walkers or canes as though they had lived long enough to see everything, and yet had never seen anything like this. Caleb stood in the middle of it all, breathing deeply as adrenaline drained from his veins. Danielle rushed forward and threw her arms around him, clinging as if afraid he might disappear. Jaden slipped between them, gripping his father's shirt with both hands, sobbing quietly. "Dad, you're really, you're really an agent." Caleb lowered himself to one knee and looked his son directly in the eyes. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I never wanted you to see the bad part of my job." "You protected us," Jaden whispered. "You're a hero." The words nearly broke him. Meanwhile, Agent Renee Porter stepped beside Caleb, giving him a sober nod. "You did the right thing," she said. Once Briggs reached for the child, protocol stopped mattering. "Family always overrides cover." Her words were steady, but even she couldn't ignore the dozens of phones pointed at them. News crews were already racing toward the park entrance. A helicopter from a local station hovered at a distance. People were live-streaming from every angle. And then it happened. A teenager shouted, "The video's up. Look!" He held his phone high as a crowd gathered around him. The footage began innocently, a birthday setup, balloons swaying peacefully. Then the cruisers arrived. The officers stormed in. Children screamed. Tables crashed. Caleb fell to his knees. Hensley stomped on the badge. Briggs reached for Jaden. And then, the part that made the world stop. Federal SUVs tore across the grass, followed by the helicopter descending like justice riding the wind. Someone gasped. Someone cheered. Someone cried. Within 30 minutes, the clip hit 3 million views. Within 2 hours, it dominated every platform, shared, stitched, captioned, analyzed. Within 12 hours, it crossed 30 million views, trending worldwide under a single, explosive tag. #birthday in the park. Comments came from every corner of the globe. Protect this man at all costs. His composure under pressure is unreal. Those officers didn't know who they were messing with. I cried watching the kid scream, "Don't hurt my dad." Imagine being so corrupt you raid a child's birthday. He kneeled for his community. He stood up for his son. National news programs interrupted their broadcasts for breaking coverage. Civil rights attorneys called for immediate reforms. Former federal agents tweeted their support. Community leaders demanded the entire police department be investigated. And yet, the most powerful reaction didn't come from the public. It came from the people of Lakewood. By evening, families who had witnessed the incident began uploading their own videos, full angles, long clips, slow-motion footage revealing every detail. Mothers spoke on camera. They terrorized our children. Teenagers posted shaky, tear-filled videos. They knocked over our games and scared our friends. An elderly man who rarely spoke in public said, "This community's been afraid for years. Today was the first time I felt hope." The story was no longer about one officer, or even a unit. It was about decades of silence cracking open. It was about a father standing against corruption while kneeling in front of his son. It was about a small community finally being seen. By midnight, journalists camped outside the park. Cars slowed just to stare. A mural artist from downtown painted a wall that read, "Courage looks like this." A silhouette of Caleb kneeling next to his son, with helicopters above. Lakewood had been living in shadows. But this birthday, this disaster-turned-miracle, was about to drag every hidden truth into the light. The morning after the viral explosion, Northwood woke up to something it had not experienced in decades: fear, not from citizens but from those who once believed themselves untouchable. The corrupt officers who ran the city like a private empire were suddenly exposed, their secrets leaking like cracks in a dam. Federal vehicles lined the streets before sunrise. Doors were knocked down. Computers seized. Files confiscated. Officials escorted out in handcuffs. Judges suspended. Deputies questioned. The community watched from porches and windows, trembling with a mixture of shock and overdue relief. They had whispered about corruption for years, stories traded quietly at night over fences and in living rooms. But never had they imagined the entire rotten core being ripped out in a single sweep. Agent Renee Porter stood in front of the press, delivering the announcement with steely precision. After a 9-month undercover investigation, we have uncovered systemic corruption involving officers, supervisors, city officials, and 2 magistrates. This is now officially the largest coordinated takedown in state history. Reporters erupted into questions, microphones shoved forward like spears. Porter raised a hand. 43 individuals are in custody. Charges include bribery, extortion, falsifying reports, civil rights violations, witness intimidation, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to cover up unlawful arrests. The crowd gasped. 43. It was a number that shifted the atmosphere of the entire state. Meanwhile, Caleb stood in the hallway of the federal building, staring at the long glass windows overlooking Northwood. His hands were tucked into his pockets, but he couldn't stop shaking. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't anxious. It was something deeper, a release of 9 months of pressure, 9 months of pretending to be powerless, 9 months of watching evil up close. Danielle approached quietly, their fingers intertwining without a word. "You did it," she whispered. "We did," Caleb corrected softly. "All of us." The door to the grand jury room opened. Agent Porter stepped inside. "Caleb, they want your statement now." He nodded. The room was packed, jurors, attorneys, note-takers, clerks. The tension pressing against the walls felt heavy, but for the first time, Caleb wasn't alone. Danielle sat in the front row. Jaden sat on her lap, holding a small stuffed toy wearing a paper badge he made at home. Caleb raised his right hand, swore the oath, and approached the stand. He spoke for nearly 2 hours, every detail of the undercover months, every recorded conversation, every threat, every moment of fear, every instance where the community trusted him without knowing what he was doing. The jurors listened in complete silence. Then came Danielle's testimony. Her voice trembled but held firm as she recounted the moment Briggs grabbed her arm. She told them how Jaden screamed, how families cried, how Hensley stomped on the badge that represented truth. And then, the smallest voice in the room spoke. Jaden. His feet couldn't reach the floor from the witness chair. His hands shook as he clutched his stuffed toy. His voice cracked at every word. The officer yelled at my dad. And he pushed him. And my dad didn't even fight. Because he said if he fought, we'd all be scared. He only got mad when they tried to take me. My dad's brave. He saved us. A hush fell over the courtroom. Not a stir. Not a cough. Not a breath. A juror wiped her tears. An older man blew his nose. Even the court reporter paused to let her own trembling settle. When it was over, the verdict was inevitable. Hensley, 24 years. Briggs, 18 years. Keener, 16 years. Multiple officials, indicted, suspended, or awaiting trial. Northwood had fallen. Not because of riots, not because of politics. But because a little boy's birthday party revealed everything rotten beneath its surface. And the city would never be the same again. A full year passed, yet the echoes of that day, the chaos, the fear, the helicopter blades carving through the sky, still lingered in Lakewood's memory. But something else lingered too. Something stronger. Something brighter. Change. Real, tangible, irreversible change. Lakewood Community Park, once a symbol of quiet suffering, now stood proud as the heart of a renewed city. The pavilion where corruption had been exposed was rebuilt, polished wooden beams, fresh paint, new picnic tables, trimmed grass, and right at the entrance stood a bronze plaque. This pavilion is dedicated to the Rivers family. And every family who deserves justice. People stopped to touch it. Some whispered prayers. Some took photos. Some simply stared, reminding themselves that courage was not always loud, it could be quiet, kneeling, steady, and unbreakable. On a warm Saturday morning, Jaden ran across the new pavilion, cape fluttering behind him just like the year before. His laughter echoed through the air, unburdened this time by fear or interrupted joy. "Dad! Mom! Come on! The treasure hunt is starting," he shouted. Caleb and Danielle followed with matching smiles, carrying trays of food and boxes of decorations. But unlike last year, they weren't alone in setting up. Neighbors poured in, dozens of them. Mr. Harris brought lemonade. The Peterson twins carried 2 boxes of cupcakes. Miss Gloria arrived with her famous peach cobbler, insisting she'd made an extra one, just for Agent Rivers. But the biggest surprise came when a group of uniformed officers approached. Not the old guard. Not the corrupt unit that once terrorized the community. These were the new recruits, trained under federal supervision, carefully selected for integrity, transparency, empathy. Their uniforms were crisp, their faces humble, their steps respectful. The new police chief, Officer Marissa Doyle, stepped forward. She looked nothing like Hensley, no arrogance, no stiffness, no simmering contempt. Doyle extended her hand to Caleb. "Agent Rivers," she said warmly, "thank you for allowing us to help today." Caleb shook her hand, surprised. "You didn't have to." "We wanted to," she interrupted with a smile. "Birthdays should be safe. And your family helped ensure that every family in this city finally can be." Behind her, officers carried balloons, helped tie banners, and even played a quick game of tag with the kids who weren't shy anymore. It was a sight no one would have believed 1 year earlier. A father approached Caleb quietly. "You saved more than your son that day," he said. "You saved all of ours too." Caleb swallowed the lump in his throat. "I didn't do it alone." As if on cue, Agent Renee Porter approached, wearing her tactical sunglasses and a rare, genuine smile. She handed Jaden a small velvet box. "For the bravest kid I've ever met," she said. Jaden opened it with wide eyes. Inside was a polished miniature replica of a federal badge engraved with Honorary Junior Agent, Jaden Rivers. His jaw dropped. "Dad, look. I'm an agent too." Caleb laughed, lifting him into the air. "You sure are." Music played. Children danced. Parents mingled. Officers served food and took photos. Laughter, free, unrestrained laughter, filled every corner of the park. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in warm orange, Caleb stood quietly watching the scene. Danielle slipped her hand into his. "What are you thinking?" she asked softly. This is the birthday he deserved last year," he said. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "No. This is better. Because now everyone here knows what you did. And no one will ever forget. Caleb watched Jaden running across the grass, cape flowing, badge gleaming. The fear of the past year seemed distant now, washed away by justice, community, and hope. For the first time since his undercover mission began, he allowed himself to breathe deeply, freely. The nightmare was over. The city was healing. And as the final rays of sunlight touched the pavilion dedicated to his family, Caleb whispered a truth he finally accepted. This time, it's a new beginning.